It's amazing what you can get away with on Twitter by having basic artistic talents and catering to a crowd that doesn't care who's producing it. Venti, also known as JasPixie, is an NSFW artist with 11,000 followers, and over the last few years he's managed to repeat the same crimes over and over again. Despite being well documented, he's evaded all consequences through various manipulation tactics, each time ensuring it will never happen again, and promising he's going to therapy to help with his attraction to minors. This video will explain who Venti is, his long history with child grooming, and hopefully make everyone a little more aware of who this person is, because he absolutely should not have a platform. Let's start with some background info. Venti is a Chilean furry NSFW artist born on June 1st, 2002, making him 23 years and 9 months old as of right now. He's been on social media and making artwork since at least 2018, growing his online presence through apps like Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, and of course, Discord. His Twitter account has 11,000 followers. People pay for his commissions as well, and his Discord server has just over 1,000 members. He carries himself as an outwardly friendly and cutesy uwu femboy, someone who couldn't possibly do any harm, when in reality it's a facade to hide who he truly is, a serial offender, who will immediately take advantage of someone as long as he thinks he can get away with it. That may sound harsh, but I promise by the end of this video you will agree. Venti uses an array of manipulation tactics to stay in control of the situations he finds himself in, and to develop codependency in his victims, notably love bombing, intermittent reinforcement, and gaslighting the victims into thinking he's not as bad as everyone says. Also, guilt tripping and threatening suicide, though he tends to use these more after getting caught. As I said, despite how well documented he is, he's managed to fly under the radar by changing his name after callouts are made. And to his existing followers, he tries to appeal to their emotions with promises of change, that he'll never do it again and therapy will fix him. I'll elaborate more on each of these when they happen. Also, please keep in mind that Venti is a habitual liar, something he's admitted to. If it's only his testimony with no further evidence, do not take it as fact. If details seem inconsistent or the story randomly changes, this is likely why. So, introduction's over. What exactly has this guy done? Oh boy, here we fucking go. On February 26, 2023, the Twitter account JasPixieArchive, an account dedicated to documenting Venti, posts a very long thread about his controversy spanning from 2018 to late 2022. We open with Venti's ex-girlfriend, who I will be referring to as T, who sparked this entire exposal to begin with. Between her and Venti are many negative experiences, but one particularly traumatizing event for T happened in April of 2021. Venti admits to using her underage nudes to gratify himself. "I masturbated with your pictures tonight. I feel bad for doing it. It wasn't the first time, and I don't think it's gonna be the last. I can't stand myself." Not only were they long broken up with at this point, Venti was nearly 19. T was 16 or 17, and in these photos was between 14 and 15 years old. She was also under the impression Venti already deleted these photos, and while she wasn't mad per se, she was definitely uncomfortable. To the more sympathetic person, this may seem like a mistake from an overly attached ex-partner, but I assure you it's a bold attempt to sway T into getting back with him, or at the very least feeding into his sexual urges. This is not the only time he will do something like this, and it's one of many demonstrations that he has zero respect for others' boundaries. For example, if he did, he would never have tweeted, "I'm afraid of being confronted by the only girl who's shown me her pussy, because I draw them so similarly. I've literally never seen another pussy that's not hers." But he did. He tweeted that. He'd continue pushing his luck in February of 2022, sending photos of his freshly shaven legs and underwear to T, then acting confused when she found that weird. She tries to communicate that if anyone sent her a photo like that, she'd be uncomfortable, yet Venti tries to twist it into being about body positivity and nothing more. Instead of just apologizing and taking no for an answer, he argues for why she should be okay with it. It's not helped that a month prior, he randomly commented, "Your tits look so big and nice today." And when she told him in all caps, "Don't talk about my tits," he said, "Okay, your feet look so soft and glamorous today." This is part of a wider obsession with T, as he'd speak about how much he misses her up until July of the same year, clearly trying whatever he thought was a good idea to re-spark their relationship, even if she was already dating someone else at the time. Venti was known to wish death upon this person, by the way. Going back to February, T was fed up with Venti. She joined his Discord server and posted a long call-out message on him, also making several tweets about it. Venti scrambled to make a response. In doing so, he took none of the claims seriously, labeling them the product of an overly emotional ex-girlfriend who just needed to move on. Venti's lack of care angered T severely, leading to her organizing a confrontational Discord call with him and a mutual friend. I'll refer to this person as M. The point of this call was to not only address his dismissiveness, but make him realize how badly he traumatized her. She starts by pointing out he avoided acknowledging certain parts of the story, since it would make him look bad, proving this by asking if Venti ever mentioned the underage nudes he still has saved to his friends, and instead of saying yes or no, decides to brazenly lie about having no memory of that ever happening. When proof this definitely did happen is brought up, Venti tries to twist the story into this screenshot, calling it a confession of deleting the photos. The obvious plot holes are pointed out, making Venti shut down before blaming the lies on having a bad memory. He then claims he deleted the photos recently, and when questioned on why his story changed again, he backpedals to the poor memory excuse. Just so we're on the same page, Venti claims he still had these photos because they were saved on an old phone he no longer used. One day he found the phone, and by extension the photos on it. They were promptly deleted, except his own testimony contradicts this, and as we'll soon see, they were not deleted at all. At this point in time, however, T is under the belief they have been deleted, even if it took her asking him over the course of 2 years to finally do it. When asked if Venti could bring himself to admit everything T accused him of, which, by the way, we haven't even started covering, he flip-flops between saying he did and didn't. This would obviously look really bad for him if he was lying, something T points out, though we wouldn't realize how much he was holding back until later. Moving on, T tries to explain how Venti both victim-blaming and victimizing himself is incredibly insensitive. Even though he denies doing that, looking at his response, it's clear he was pairing these two tactics with what can only be described as the nonchalant gimmick. He likes to play it cool when confronted, to seem like he's not actually guilty. Keep in mind that throughout their relationship, Venti would constantly blame his mistakes on things like depression, to dodge accountability. None of this is new to T. She knows how he works. Going back to the call, she points out the hypocrisy of Venti labeling her callout as blackmail, when he allegedly blackmailed her constantly throughout their relationship. He seemingly admits to this, saying he did malicious things because he was obsessed with her, and needed to keep her close to him by any means necessary. I've mentioned Venti's response a few times now, so let's take a look at what he had to say. First thing brought up is a defense of his character, that he never leveraged T's personal issues to gain favors from her. Well, according to T and Venti himself, this is false. Yet Venti denies this ever being the case and instead says it's why the relationship ended. Her issues were too much for him. He then refers to all of this as petty high school drama and says it doesn't matter, which is a fucking crazy statement when you remember what he's being accused of. Possessing CSIM of somebody is not petty high school drama. Despite the 3-year age gap, he refers to it as dating at the same age and a normal teen relationship, adding that after they broke up, he was a shitty ex and did a lot of stupid shit because he missed her, but afterwards moved on with his feelings. After that, they stopped talking for a long time, then became friends again and spoke regularly, slowly speaking less but remaining friends up until the callout was posted. We don't know what exactly happened between T and Venti, but from what we can see here, it's clearly more than petty high school drama. He then says that's all about my ex. She's someone I never want to talk or see again. Supposedly his friend suggested cutting her off, and this finally gave him a reason to. He's moved on from his bitterness towards her, and hopes that she finally does the same. Reminder that he was sending her pictures of his freshly shaven legs less than a week ago, then getting upset when she found that weird. The casual tone mixed with watering down his controversies is an attempt to take control of the situation, made crystal clear by the last sentence, which is unbelievable. Every time we spoke, she'd remind me of something bad I've done and tell me I've never changed. Block me. Move on. This is also petty and meaningless. Let's get something straight. Doing stupid shit is like playing with bug spray and a lighter indoors. It is not possessing your ex's underage nudes and telling them, I just jerked off to these, and I'll probably do it again. Then getting mad when this makes them uncomfortable and not deleting them for some reason after being asked to for 2 years. The accusations of manipulation are brushed off by simply denying them and claiming she's unstable, then brings up a completely irrelevant point that people have been making fun of him and sending him death threats, so they're clearly not taking this seriously. This is just to victimize himself. No one cares, dude. Address the fact that you own CSIM and refuse to delete it. The next part of the callout focuses on an individual I'll be calling Zoe. There's no current contact between her and Venti. However, what transpired between them, what we know of at least, is disgusting. A quick disclaimer, Venti literally cannot keep his story straight about this person, so if it's a little hard to follow, I promise it'll make sense later. The two met on Facebook in 2018 and maintained contact up until 2022. Venti was 16, and in his response claims that Zoe was 12. They became affiliated after Zoe approached Venti sexually, starting 4 years of off-and-on sexual conversations and NSFW sharing. She was strangely mature, and since they were both minors, he saw nothing wrong with it, though issues started to arrive when she began sending shock content to him after learning he was in a relationship. According to him, they didn't talk much since she made tons of alt accounts, but would always come back trying to be sexual with him. This is where his story starts getting unusual. Apparently, Zoe revealed herself to be a grown man this entire time, LARPing as a girl for some reason. He says T knew this in the callout, but chose to go with the narrative that she was a minor since it made the details seem worse. After the reveal, the supposed adult started blackmailing Venti into all sorts of things, something he was terrified to refuse after the shock content he'd seen. One of these favors include drawing lolicon artwork, something he supposedly regrets doing. When Venti turned 18, he cut off Zoe and never spoke to them again. His sequence of events implies the two only spoke for 2 years, and everything that happened between them was essentially catfishing. He also says everyone else has the wrong idea. This is the definitive truth. Except, it isn't. There's proof the two spoke until 2022, meaning Venti would be 20 and Zoe 16. Except that's also not true. Not because Zoe is a grown man. No, we'll get to that in a second. It's not true because according to Venti's own testimonies, their age gap wasn't 4 years. It was 6. Venti met Zoe when she was 10 years old. He contradicts the 12 years old narrative numerous times in the past when speaking of her, clearly establishing that Zoe is in fact 14 as of 2022, which means that she was 10 when they met. Changing the ages is an attempt to make himself look better, and uses this catfish fabrication to make his crime seem obsolete. First of all, even if the catfishing thing was true, the intention is still incriminating. Second, there is not one mention of this until after the call-out. The fact he's lying about the ages and for how long they were in contact makes the claim even less credible. Venti decides to drop the Catfish Act and roll with a new narrative. He now claims their sexual conversations and artwork were in an effort to upset her 30-year-old boyfriend. Funnily enough, mentioning this exact same thing in 2022, he refers to her as 14, which inadvertently proves he was lying about her age and how long they spoke. But let's assume that he's not lying and somehow mistook 2018 for 2020. That couldn't be the case either, because there's a screenshot of his artwork from 2018 that has Zoe's name in the files. It is undeniable. Venti became sexually involved with a 10-year-old when he was 16, and this continued until he was 20 and she was 14. Later in the Discord call with T and M, Venti mentions this period of time was when Zoe was the most sexually communicative with him. T points out that minors cannot make decisions like that, and he should have been responsible enough to cut her off. You were talking with her from 10 to 13. The only thing Venti has to say to that is, actually, it was 12 to 14. It's worth mentioning Venti also uses one of the screenshots to frame himself as uninterested, though in other screenshots it tells a much different story. This one, for example, where he says, "I want to die." Then a screenshot of his chat with Zoe sending him lolly porn comes up, and he says, "Never mind." Cutting through his bullshit, the fact remains that Zoe and Venti were in contact for 4 years, from 10 to 14 and 16 to 20 respectively. During this time they'd have sexual conversations and collaborate together on lolicon artwork until 2022, some of which was sent to T&M, which is ironically the only reason we know anything about this. Everything we know was exposed by Venti himself, so we're likely only scratching the surface. Yet it's still really bad nonetheless. The favors they shared in Venti's own words are things like drawing backgrounds for her, or uploading photos to E621. In this screenshot, he sends a sketch of him and Zoe's sonas in a motel with a pack of condoms. His friend asks if it's a cuck fetish thing, to which Venti provides the context. This image is to upset Zoe's boyfriend, then refers to it as a family-friendly story for dinner. When questioned why he never cut her off after she sent videos of children being murdered, he tries to play dumb to it, gets called out for lying, then changes his story to the video she sent being fake. As for not cutting off Zoe, well, he had morbid curiosity apparently. Later in this call, he blames everything on Zoe, saying she was one of those minors that begs adults for sexual things until the adult gives in. And in this case, he caved due to his hypersexuality. Venti loves victim blaming. It's to give himself some form of plausible deniability. Throughout his recollection of events, he very rarely takes any accountability, always saying, well, they were usually the one to approach me. Venti genuinely thinks what he's doing isn't as bad so long as he's not the initiator. Later in the call, T would ask if he's going to include the truth about Zoe in his updated confession. He says yes, although in the end he continued lying about her age, and twisting the story into some weird revenge plot against her 30-year-old boyfriend. Whether this is true or not, the most consistent story tells us that Venti was sexually involved with a 10-year-old he met off Facebook when he was 16, continuing until they were 14 and 20. It's so comically bad and illegal, even the twisted version to make himself look better would still make any rational person find him disgusting. Let's move on to Venti's Facebook ban. 2 questions for you. Do you know how hard it is to get banned from Facebook? And do you want to take a guess what he did? Well, he sent someone CSEM, of course. T brings this up in her callout, and Venti did address it, but only mentions that he received it. The truth is that Venti not only downloaded it after receiving it over Discord, but later I guess thought it was a good idea to start sending it to people over Facebook. Also, here's a screenshot to verify this is in fact Venti. He received this image after floating around in a shock-oriented group, and one of the members sent it to him over Discord. In the twit longer, he says this claim frustrates him, since T and M knew he was 16 when it happened. and only had it in the first place because he was getting groomed by lolicons. He goes on to say how hurtful this was to bring up, how traumatizing it was, and how people are now calling him Mr. CP to mock him. Do you think it's not traumatizing to have seen that and being reminded of it, let alone being blamed for it? You downloaded it and sent it to people, you fucking moron. Who else are we supposed to blame? According to him, after he got banned from Facebook, the SJW spirit entered him, and he cleared all his hard drives, including his cub photos. Not to be an unreasonable skeptic, but seeing as he refused to delete T's nudes, I don't think he should be trusted here, especially since he literally still draws cub to this day. Speaking of cub, Venti began posting about how much he despises it on his Twitter, also reposting tons of callout threads on other people. Ironically, at the exact same time this behavior started, he made a new account called Pixie Milky, dedicated to posting and interacting with the cub community. If you don't know what cub is, it's furry NSFW of baby animals. This new account was deleted in September of 2022, although he claims it was deleted way sooner and also created later than it actually was, minimizing the duration of this account's existence. The purpose of its creation was a lot grosser than anyone expected. In the TwitLonger response, he doesn't go into much detail, only saying that he was indulging in fetishes he wasn't sure he had or not, and to try interacting with the NSFW side of Twitter. When he brings up the cub, all he bothers mentioning is that T was repulsed by it, and that it would turn into an extensive moral debate, so he doesn't really care to address it. What a good fucking response. He denies liking cub at all in the TwitLonger, then goes on to make an apology riddled with lies to save face. First, he apologizes for being overzealous on callout threads against groomers, saying it seemed hypocritical how he's been accused of the same things. He then blatantly tries to rewrite history, claiming he never liked cub, but more egregiously, that he never groomed any minors. At the end of the statement, he doubles down, randomly lumping in the victims of grooming he's allegedly supported, and how he made them feel safer and better about what happened to them. This is totally irrelevant to the story. It's just another attempt to build credibility. And as I said, both of his claims are blatantly untrue. He's been downloading and even drawing cub for at least 4 years now. Even after getting exposed, he didn't stop. Also, people like T never drew NSFW until after she met Venti. We still to this day do not know the extent of what happened between him and Zoe. However, according to T, he was bragging about teaching her how to masturbate. He has definitely groomed a minor before. To elaborate on Venti's manipulation, he relies on making you question your gut instincts, or better yet, making you not even realize the game he's playing. Because of this, you should take what he says at face value, then read between the lines, since essentially everything he says is going to be untrue in some regard. He also heavily relies on your sympathy. His apologies across this video may seem genuine, but I promise they aren't. And anytime he brings up supporting victims, it's a red herring to distract from the harm he's done. I mean, he's been called out for lying and misleading people several times in this TwitLonger alone, and we've barely even scratched the surface of his controversies. Getting back on topic, when Venti was questioned in the Discord call, he had some very interesting things to say. T says he acts exactly the same to this day and indulges in the same stuff as before. Venti responds saying, "Not anymore since the call out. I am no longer a lolicon, nor look for sick or dark content." Remember, Venti claims this alt account was deleted sometime in 2021, when the reality is he was still using it at least 7 months after the callout. It's here that he confesses this account was to indulge in an age play fetish where he fantasized about being a minor getting taken advantage of by adults. T's next point was about a 15 to 16-year-old he'd frequently interact with. This user would post NSFW of themselves, though Venti never makes any future comment on this. Instead, he chooses only to apologize for the supposed fetish behind the account's creation. This isn't nearly as bad as his other allegations, or the ones yet to come. However, it is still important to cover his tendency to lie to make himself look better in every situation. His story changed twice here, and the claim he no longer engages with taboo NSFW was a bold-faced lie. Moving on to one of his worst offenses, Venti is cited to have been involved with an individual I'll be calling Noah, an artist who's roughly 5 years younger than Venti. Allegedly, Venti maintained the lie that anything between him and Noah were strictly when they were both minors, as if 13 and 17 made things any better. The reality is Noah is yet another grooming victim, as he'd come out with proof of their sexual conversations carried over into Venti's adulthood, up until he was 19 and Noah was only 14. Venti would also frequently draw NSFW of their sonas together, and throughout this relationship would always emphasize a dominant versus submissive dynamic, with Noah being the taller dominant one and Venti being the submissive. It's worth mentioning Pixie Milky was created around the time he started acting this way, so maybe this is what he meant by experimenting. I may be reading this screenshot incorrectly. Please correct me if I'm wrong and don't take this as fact. Here it seems that after a long period of inactivity, Venti randomly comes back in December of 2021, trying to initiate a sexual conversation with Noah, who shuts him down by saying, "You can't just leave and then come back acting like this." Venti then responds, "You almost bit. Damn," then leaves the chat. As far as I know, this is the last time they ever spoke, and wow is that a bad look. After the callout, a friend of T came forth with her own stories of Venti. She was even younger than T, so at least 3 years younger than him, but no age is established. According to her, Venti drew an SFW of her and posted it to Facebook while she was a minor. The screenshot in the photo she did give consent for, however he continued doing it without consent and still posted it to his public profile. Though the evidence has been lost to time, so look at the pattern of behavior and decide for yourself. She also drops a fucking bombshell. In a future conversation, this anonymous friend reveals to T that Venti confessed to still having her underage nudes saved on his computer in mid-2022. Yes, you heard that right, computer. Remember when he claimed to only have it downloaded on an old phone he forgot about? Well, not only did he lie about never deleting the pictures in the first place, he lied about not having them saved on other devices. I just found out Jazz still has my nudes from less than a year ago. She says she deleted them 2 years ago, when she still had them a few months ago. When I confronted her, she told me sorry but she liked them too much, and now says it was an accident and isn't responsible. Keep in mind, Venti has been asked repeatedly for years at this point to delete those photos, and has lied about deleting them twice now. Also, he was bragging about still having them to T's friend. Do you have any idea how fucking depraved someone has to be to brag about owning CSEM of somebody's friend? Adding to that, remember that he told T to essentially get over it. Worse is that people were still defending his actions as if he wasn't 20 years old when this happened. He knew what he was doing, he just didn't care. Really quick, I should mention Venti was trans at this point. That's why their pronouns keep changing. I know how some of you are about that, but whatever, just want to avoid confusion. Moving on, Venti was an infamous figure on a now defunct app named Project Z, designed for Spanish children and young teens to make friends. Reason being, he was frequently weird around minors. We know this because one of the victims came out after seeing T's callout, an anonymous 16-year-old. What he had to say was just as disgusting as the rest. Irrefutable evidence of grooming and lack of care for what he was doing. Venti, 20 at the time of these events, was initiating sexual conversations and even sending nudes to this person. There will be slightly more information about this much later, but for now, that's it. So, as far as callouts go, this is pretty damning. I mean, any rational person would want nothing to do with this guy after this. Hell, the stuff with T could have landed him in prison, and it's not like this was the handiwork of a dumb kid. Venti was an adult for 95% of this. He was fully aware of his actions, and instead of owning up to any of it, tried manipulating the story to regain control. I've mentioned his two responses. He first made a twit longer, which responded to T's callout and attempted to downplay the accusations. Then, T and M confronted him in a Discord call, convincing him that if he truly did want to change, then he'd confess to his accusations and get off the internet. Trying to save face, he agreed, and that's when he posted his second response, the confession. It's what you're currently looking at on screen. All of this text admitting his faults, promising to be better from here on out. Surely, he'd never let anything like this ever happen again. Well, none of it has any relevancy because a few days later he deleted it, and changed the story once again. Alright, what was his third revision of the story? That he was blackmailed to say all of this, of course. His confessions didn't have the intended response. Some were shocked, yet took what he said as a promise to improve. Others weren't so quick to give him a second chance, especially after straight up lying in his original response. Venti is quite the entitled person. He sort of expects people to side with him and understand his point of view even when it's flawed. Needless to say, when people were understandably appalled that he was admitting to, well, owning CSEM, he started panicking. In doing so, he deleted his confession. After deactivating his profile for a week or two, he came back and posted this. I was blackmailed. In the voice call we had, I was being told and interrogated about every one of my issues, and at the end was either told to post a confession or they would do it themselves. They told me not to soften anything, so I was prohibited from giving my side of the story. I had to admit guilt to everything. That is not what blackmail is. T gave Venti the chance to prove that he truly did want to change by admitting his crimes and confessing himself. Either that or T would take it upon herself to do it. All of it would have come out either way. But Venti wasn't worried about improving. He was worried about how this would make him look. And when he noticed it wasn't having the intended result, he did what he always does and turns into the world's worst gaslighter. Except, it worked. People, to this day, fall for the same old lies over and over again. After all of this, Venti continued posting as if nothing happened. This was only the first of many callouts against him, and if you ask me, not even the worst one. So like I just said, Venti gets exposed for owning CSEM and grooming minors for the last 4 years. After changing his story a grand total of 3 times, he settles on the blackmail argument. He'd like you to believe that none of it was true and his side of the story would have cleared up everything. Well, not even 2 months after the JasPixieArchive callout and all of his damage control efforts, he was caught again. Twice. Someone I'll call A released a brief callout thread of Venti in light of their 21st birthday. Friends of theirs came forth with evidence they were still being weird with minors, providing a few screenshots of Venti being sexual with a 16-year-old. One of these screenshots, Venti is acknowledging the fact they're a minor, saying they'll start dating in 3 months when they turn 18 if Venti's still single. Once you become 18 in 3 months, if I'm still single, I will ask you out. This post inspired a separate user named X to come out with their experiences, except this time, the screenshots were only from a couple days ago, meaning Venti was actively grooming them. X was only 15, yet Venti was okay with being sexual, sending an SFW, sharing his penis size, and telling him that he's gonna get them pregnant. X states they were not open to sexual conversations, rather Venti manipulated them into it. After earning their trust, he started the codependency bond, love bombing and making himself seem like a person who truly cares for people. He knows if he steps out of line or makes the victim question if he's a bad person, he'll get exposed again. So when the same person told Venti they were going to make this public, he started freaking out, spamming X, begging them not to post it, promising he'll never do it again. That'll be the last time anything like this happens. Begging for his own sake didn't work, so he then tried to shift blame onto the victim by saying he has a bad habit of not stopping when the other party starts teasing. Although that didn't happen in this scenario. He initiated everything. He then tries to reason by saying he'll lose all his online friends from this and be alone, since he doesn't have any friends in real life. Sadly for him, the truth would come out for the greater good. Between June of 2023 and late 2024, there wasn't much about Venti being said, but make no mistake, this is not because he finally stopped grooming minors. In reality, he had several victims at the same time. The only thing that changed was that he went through more effort to hide it, although in the end, it would catch up to him. On March 5th, 2025, SimFizz posts a Google document exposing several of Venti's crimes between 2024 and early 2025, later adding an admission of guilt from Venti himself at the end. Quick disclaimer, while researching for this, the original Google Doc was deleted, and all evidence was destroyed forever. The document is absolutely unrecoverable. Is what Venti wishes I'd say, because luckily we had a backup PDF of everything. That being said, some of the images were cut off, yet the evidence is still damning as the majority of it is intact. With that in mind, I present to you the Venti files. The doc opens with an introduction on Venti, and a notice to read through the JasPixieArchive if you haven't already, which we've already done thus far. The first segment focuses on an individual named D, an at the time 17-year-old artist who was friends with Venti. We open with SimFizz passively questioning Venti about his struggles, bad habits, and therapy. Some critical info is shared here, notably Venti admitting to being a habitual liar, saying, "I need to lie to survive," and that he'd withhold information if it meant dodging the consequences of his actions. He uses any time he's questioned like this as a chance to make himself look better, attempting to reduce your suspicion by appearing genuine. For example, SimFizz points out that D and Venti sharing their NSFW artwork is irresponsible, and Venti says, "I see nothing sexual about it, because I feel asexual." He wants you to believe he does not even like talking about NSFW topics beyond artistic expression. Later in the same conversation, Venti says it's intoxicating when someone is 17, almost 18. According to him, it's a shockingly common way of thinking, and, no. Before the doc transitions to talking about D, SimFizz tells Venti he's got one more chance, since he was caught doing pretty much the exact same thing not even a month ago. This is a pretty good time to state that SimFizz and Venti were friends at the time, since SimFizz wholeheartedly believed Venti wanted to change. If you for some reason ever find yourself in this situation, do not try to help someone like Venti. He's a serial offender that's demonstrated nothing but ingenuine manipulative behavior. There is such thing as being too nice, and you risk enabling someone like Venti by trying to help them. You also risk being guilty by association, but that's neither here nor there. Getting back on topic, Venti explicitly stated numerous times that him and D were never sexual. Never wanted to, never did. At least, directly, whatever that means. On December 24th, 2024, a month after SimFizz brought this up to Venti, the truth would come out. D made a call-out post of what happened between them, although the proof is now unavailable. However, we know it happened for a fact because Venti admits to it himself. D claims Venti was sexual with them as recently as October of 2024, sent them porn that wasn't just artwork, and invited them to an NSFW Twitter account, where they posted nudes of themselves. At the time, they were one of 2 followers on this account. Who was the other person? We'll get to that in a second. In the meantime, let's cover Venti clearly grooming D with the same love-bombing techniques from before. He knew D was in a poor relationship at the time and leveraged this to exploit them. He was subtly pushing sexual themes into these conversations with examples like this, where D sends him an image and Venti sends it back edited to say fraught instead of kiss. Part of the grooming here includes Venti explaining himself, once again trying to downplay what he's done and change definitions to keep D complicit. He includes a mention that, "I was groomed, you were too, D. What happened with redacted? No grooming occurred." If you wonder how much sympathy he had for his victims, the answer is none. After hearing the news, Simfizz lost all faith in Venti but would seemingly stick around in his server. As I said before, he was caught doing something similar around the same time suspicions of him and D arose. Though from how much he watered down what happened, Simfizz really did assume it was a nothing burger mixed with a little irresponsibility. The reality was that Venti went right back to what every prior callout tried to tell everyone. As for what happened, well, the truth about that would come out next year. The next victim's name is O, and at the time 17-year-old moderator of Venti's Discord server, also a friend of Simfizz, who just as before tries to passively question O as to why they're following Venti's NSFW account. According to O, they were the first person to gain access to Venti's NSFW and private Twitter. Remember how I said his private account for posting nudes only had 2 people on it? Well, both of them were 17. This means that account was likely created explicitly for aiding him in grooming them. Supposedly, O mentioned their NSFW account in passing, and Venti was curious to see it. O suggested he'd let Venti in if he made him free artwork as a joke, but Venti instantly agreed. O then tells Simfizz he's aware of Venti's past, and the two have spoken about how if they were to be doing anything sexual with one another, it wouldn't be right. This implies they have not done anything sexual with each other. Simfizz then began questioning Venti himself at the same time, who claims he unfollowed as soon as he noticed his age. Simfizz points out he didn't, and his excuse is to prove O's other account was still following, which actually makes sense since private accounts don't give follower notifications. He then mentioned someone else brought up the same thing, since the artwork he was drawing for O was concerning. The reason being, O had a paw fetish, and the art Venti gave him was focused on them. He apologizes for not noticing O was following sooner, and says he's tired of underage people finding his accounts and causing problems. According to him, he was curious to see the supposed alt account with no intentions of interacting. Now, he says he's scared people think he's trying something, and lastly says he hates how everyone assumes he must be up to no good, especially when he's so chill and nice. Simfizz rightfully tells him it's insane to bribe a minor with artwork to see their NSFW account, and Venti responds saying that's not how it happened. He was already drawing the art anyways, and he didn't even know it was an NSFW account. Before getting into the truth of O and Venti's relationship, Simfizz states he was being naive to assume Venti was just making a mistake. And I mean, yeah. To anyone who wasn't friends with Venti, it would be pretty obvious what he was doing here. Months later, a mutual friend contacted Simfizz. In their words, Venti is still doing bad stuff and hasn't changed at all. Our anonymous source gets into a conversation with O, providing proof he's still offending with other minors as recently as October. This is in relation to D's callout from earlier. O at this point has had a fallout with Venti since he's, quote, kind of a dick. Seeing proof of this on top of already knowing his past angered O, so much that he came forth with information of what happened between them. No surprise, it's more than either of them let on. They were sexual and sending NSFW back and forth between October and November of 2024. But what's worse is Venti was requesting nudes. After this point, they began sending those frequently, including videos. Like always, Venti starts to feel bad, temporarily abstaining from ERP with minors, although he'd still display sexual thoughts. Like mentioning that he used his old chats to gratify himself on February 22nd, 2 weeks before this Google Doc was published. The truth is, he only had the drive to stop because he nearly got caught, or to use intermittent reinforcement, a type of conditioning where rewards are given occasionally rather than every time a behavior occurs. Kind of like gambling. Venti uses this to groom people into wanting to do sexual things with him. What leads me to believe this is, well, Venti's break with O lasted 48 hours before starting up again. Afterwards, more nudes and videos were sent as per Venti's request. Now that O was telling the truth, it came out that he did in fact receive the artwork as a bribe for his NSFW account. But later, Venti made an alternate piece featuring nut on the paws, which is what turned their conversations from a little NSFW to fully sexual. If that isn't textbook grooming and coercion, I don't know what is. Keep in mind, O felt regret and sympathy for Venti after this, blaming himself for everything. Every single message Venti sent was a carefully crafted string of manipulation, purely to ensure O either felt too guilty to reveal information, or genuinely believed he wasn't a victim of grooming. The silver lining of this horrible situation is the truth did come out in the end. We can use this to prevent more victims in the future, and hopefully O is able to recover from this in time. Upon learning this, Simfizz questions both O and Venti how it happened, and neither of them know. Venti throws a pity party, being apologetic only after getting caught and deeply incriminating himself. I didn't like it. There's no world where I'd ever be interested in it. I don't know why these things happen to me. He tries to scrape up an ounce of sympathy by going on about how he doesn't know why he did it and how he hates himself. Simfiz continues citing his own words such as, "At least I don't share nudes with my victims," and points out how he literally made an adult space with people who share his sexuality. However, he still cannot stop talking to minors. Venti responds, "You're being unfair. That's not how it is." Yet, that's exactly how it is. The fact that he, to this day, continues letting minors into the same Discord server he's groomed people from proves this. It's honestly comedic how he gets caught red-handed 2 weeks prior and starts saying, "I don't do this anymore. I've changed." Zero accountability. Venti admits he lied about D and O because he regretted his actions and was scared of getting outed. Then starts saying some of the most infuriating things in this whole video. He demands Simfiz to calm down, says he's going to keep going as if this is just a bump in the road, and starts shamelessly guilt-tripping to prevent another callout. "Do you want to put an end to me? This isn't how things work in the long run. It's why I'm against callouts in exile." Interesting how a repeat child groomer and person who possesses CSEM is against the idea of callout threads and social exile. Surely his opinion is unbiased. "The only reason I'm better and things aren't worse is because I have people. I have a net. I have a society for myself to keep me grounded." Brother, you aren't better. You were just caught. It starts slowly. My therapist told me relapses are possible, but the process is to work your way up, not beat yourself up because it happened again. You relapsed. You keep trying. You can tell that he genuinely believes he deserves another chance. "If I didn't have all the people and friends, I wouldn't have felt bad about what happened with D&O. When I got called out the first time, I started getting approached by worse people. People that wanted me for what I did. People that wanted me to perpetrate. I know these have value to you because they're true." This is a common tactic people use to keep others quiet. The notion that talking about it would do more harm than good by spreading it to other people. It's a flimsy argument when it's used on things most people already know about, and in this case, Venti has a Twitter account dedicated to his crimes. People know. Later on, Venti explains how inside his head, these things aren't so bad because they're watered down. He doesn't see them as bad as they are, something that is clear by his present-day actions, which we'll get to. The conversation ends with Venti begging for his house and family to be unaffected, as who he is online is disconnected from the real world. Despite the conversation ending, Venti starts monologuing, seemingly trying to convince himself he's not a bad person for what he did and that he deserves forgiveness. "I promise, nothing has happened since these two. I need to stop worrying about the situation and worry about getting help. I still believe in myself. After the Project Z callout, I knew I messed up but could keep going. After 2 more victims, I didn't know what to do, but I knew deep within I could keep going. This wasn't the end. I had to keep trying. Then D&O happened, and it's something major because it set me back. I stopped being so sexual and started sending kids away from me. Then something took over me. Myself, but worse. A pleasure seeker. I know something needs to change. I restructured my life. Stopped being sexual almost entirely. You might have realized I stopped having so much ERP with you and everyone else. Realizing the past wasn't just dumb mistakes, but severe faults I needed to work on. That's where I am now. I'll keep believing in myself. It doesn't help that the regular side of me, the non-sexual part, is a frequent liar. I should have been open to you before. I should have said, Simfiz, I made a mistake with O. I need to talk about it. I also felt bad for making O lie. I'm relieved I don't have to keep it in anymore, but I wish it wasn't this way. I really mean the things I say. I'm sorry I lied to you so much. I've told way more to others. I don't know why I was so scared of being honest with you. I should have trusted you more. I really mean it. I want to keep trying. I hope this reaches you." Before moving on, Simfiz makes a brief mention to unrelated offenses, notably posting softcore NSFW in his Discord, sending cropped NSFW to minors, having conversations about feral NSFW and pushing minors to draw lewd artwork, and lastly inviting someone to his NSFW server on their 18th birthday, which is certainly weird if you ask me. Remember how Venti just promised D and O were the only 2 victims he had recently? That there was definitely not another victim? Well, there's 2 more. Except one isn't in this document. What's different about this victim is unlike D and O, they weren't 17, they were 14. I do need to mention this person who will be referred to as K went out of their way to incriminate Venti with the purpose of exposing him. If you're underage, you seriously shouldn't be doing stuff like that. However, that doesn't change the fact Venti willingly sent a total of 20 nudes and videos to K, as recently as February 3rd of 2025. They had numerous sexual conversations, and Kay tried gauging how he felt about the whole thing in a few of them. So you don't want to do this again? We'll probably do this again, until you find someone else to be with. In this artwork he drew, he was sure to include text pointing at the 14-year-old's characters saying they want to get knocked up. After the document was published, Venti was questioned one last time, and his admittedly horrible response was added at the bottom of the document. In a massive monologue, He confesses to being sexually involved with 10 minors directly, and mentioning other situations where he had an opportunity but decided against doing anything with them. He's seemingly confessing to everything he's done, including what's in the document, starting with the Project Z situation from way before. Venti outright says he was 16, I was 20 I believe. I didn't really care but we had ERP anyways. I cut him off because he was too clingy. A different victim named Archie actually pursued him after the first callout. They had a Discord server for sharing material, and Archie was so into lolicon and pedo stuff that Venti was freaked out by it. After hearing about all the adults this minor was engaged with, he kicked him from the server, also stating that he never sent any nudes and when the minor offered, he declined. It's unknown if the server is still open, and knowing how Venti refused to delete the CSAM on his phone for years, well, I wouldn't get our hopes up. Archie eventually went on to get exposed himself, and Venti used the opportunity to make his own callout because Archie's victim asked him to, likely to try and give himself credibility amidst the ocean of allegations against him. Using another person's Discord server, he met 2 more victims he'd retained contact with for several years, and they reassured him that it wasn't that bad. After hearing their reassurance, he began questioning if him being sexual with minors was actually a bad thing, since no one would ever know and it was consensual. One of the victims would cut him off, then return later to continue having the same sexual conversations for, quote, quite a while. Venti mentions that he nearly engaged in sexual conversations with Simfizz when he was only 17, and had urges to send him NSFW artwork, since he found Simfizz's obsession with his art amusing, just not enough to do anything. Though, according to Venti, they would start being sexual once Simfizz was old enough. Right here, Venti sheds more light on D, saying it wasn't one-sided. They mutually engaged in flirting, rather than him initiating everything. He still believes all of this is suddenly okay when the minors are initiating stuff with him. Also, when he posted nudes on his private Twitter, you know, the one where 2 minors were the only followers, it was to, quote, prove Twitter slop anatomy is a real thing. In October, they became sexually active, and he even received photos over WhatsApp. It ended when her ex made a call out on D, and D said, I was only doing that with Venti to make my ex upset. Afterwards, Venti talks about someone named Lilac, who never stated their age, yet engaged in sexual conversation anyways. He said he figured they were an adult because they had a Twitter with NSFW artwork of their Sona, were following NSFW accounts and interacted with them, and lastly commissioned NSFW artists, meaning the chances of this person being a minor were astronomically low. It's extremely irresponsible to be sexual with someone without knowing their age. Although with how many previous offenses there are, he probably wouldn't have stopped even if he did know. Also, I don't know what he means by astronomically low. All of his previous victims had these things too. Moving on to yet another victim, Venti says that pretty much everything happened after the victim was 18, but they were sexual prior to that. We talked like he was any other adult. Like I was just any guy and he was just any guy. I even asked him today. Notice how we kinda just forgot that happened between us? Then says he's confident if O never came out about anything, he would have ended up just like this victim, taking it to the grave, because it's the quote, natural course things seem to take. After that, he goes mask off by saying, do you have any idea how many adults and minors have sex with each other, and it never comes out because it's just something that happens and that's it. I have so many things I want to say, and all of them would get my channel terminated, so I'll just say that no crime is too severe for this fucking guy and leave it at that. After this, he brings up 2 minors on Twitter who kept sending and interacting with his NSFW posts. This supposedly made him uncomfortable, so he blocked them and manually removed all minors who were following him. Next, he mentions a lot of minors do NSFW things on their private accounts like it's not an issue. No idea why he's bringing this up, though he definitely has a point. If you see minors with NSFW accounts, please tell them to deactivate it. Moving on to his self-proclaimed lowest point, K. For the longest time, nothing between me and them happened. However, at the end of 2024, they'd act super weird around me, and engaged with my NSFW Twitter on their private account. She then began flirting over me being a femboy, until one night in January, I gave in and we had ERP. I kept going back and forth between, I feel like I've ruined my life, why did I do this, and sure, whatever. It happened 2 more times, until the last one in February. During these chats, he'd send various photos and videos to K. And once again, while K was baiting him into doing this as a minor, the ethical argument around that doesn't change the fact Venti still did it. To summarize his behavior throughout this document, it's the same pattern of manipulation from the first callout. Despite swearing up and down he would change, he only got worse. He'd lie, even after getting caught and using that as a chance to finally be honest. In all his confessions, one thing is clear. He does not care about his victims or what he did to them. Venti isn't worried that he's a threat to minors, that he's a repeat offender, or that he's traumatizing people. No. He's worried about his reputation, what other people think of him, and worried that he might not get away with it. Something else more pressing than his victims was his Discord server, apparently. Luckily, his safety net, as he worded it, turned against him in light of the Simfizz doc. Members left, but more importantly, his moderators weren't staying quiet. Venti had the profoundly fucking stupid idea of capitalizing off his controversy to open the server so people joined. And naturally, they not only thought it was stupid, but exceptionally insensitive. He then asks if they're mad at him for what he's been doing the last 3 days besides that suggestion, pertaining to the damage control efforts. To which one mod responds, "What kind of question is that? You sent your cock to a 14-year-old. Venti responds saying, "What does that have to do with what I'm asking?" Then deletes the message and follows up with, "Do you think it's mature to say something like that? I hate that I did that. Stop talking about it unseriously." On the topic of therapy, he says, "It's like $100 a pop. I'm gonna get there. I guess all these child grooming offenses are just mild bumps in the road. No big deal, right?" They rightfully lay into him, pointing out how disingenuous and disrespectful it is to insist on keeping the server open after he used it to find multiple victims. The mods also point out that he's been called out 3 times for the same thing, using the same excuses every time. This makes him very defensive. "Listen, I don't have anything else. Just let me have this. You don't deserve anything else. You ruined this. Fine, I'll just keep planning my suicide." Suicide baiting over a server full of kids who have never interacted with you more than one post is crazy. Now, instead of being defensive, he crashes out, essentially saying fuck you, and claiming the only reason they're saying any of this is to drive him to taking his own life. "You want me to do it. I know your fingers are eating at you to type it, just like everyone else. Stop making assumptions. It's clear they aren't budging." So he changes up the tactic from threatening suicide to reasoning. "Support me wanting to change. I don't want to be a hebephile. I can't do this alone. Stop making fun of me. Shut up. You aren't helping. You should have thought about that when you lied to our faces. You not only hurt the victims, but the people who genuinely stood up for you and lost friendships over you." After switching to reasoning, he admits what we all know by now. Venti confesses to being a pedophile, or at least a hebephile. It's more or less just him trying to victimize himself, though if you doubted his condition, well, you've heard it from the horse's mouth. After this point, the conversation continues going nowhere. Venti very clearly feels entitled to his mod team's sympathy for simply believing in himself, downplaying the severity of what he did as something I regret doing. Moral of the story, they left. Though his Discord server still remains active to this day. In fact, as of me posting this video, I am literally in it, and anyone who joins to point out the obvious gets muted. It's an echo chamber of roughly 1,000 people. Any doubt as to whether Venti is guilty or not is snuffed out by members promising he's changed. Venti has groomed at least one person throughout all 5 years of his adult life. That is not something you can just walk away from. But maybe his words really pulled at your heartstrings. What if he meant it this time? Well, one good question deserves another. What if I told you we weren't done yet? There's even more. In April of 2025, a month after the Google Doc was published, Venti made a response on Twitter calling it a messy situation, and of course, promising it won't happen again. He won't go back to being the person he was. Lo and behold, not even 2 weeks after the Google Doc was posted, he was still talking to minors. Where have I heard it won't happen again before? Oh, right, when he got caught the first 50 fucking times. To this person, Venti says, "I want to get better, but I want to see the pics you post. You're such an exception to everything." We'll get into that in a second. He also promised to not make any more social media accounts, and warned anyone claiming to be him after this point is an impersonator. Well, that lasted about as long as you'd expect. Not only did he reactivate his Twitter, he created a Blue Sky account, a new NSFW Twitter named Throbbing Barbed Popsicles, and still posts his work on E621. Even though his main Twitter was private at the time, he was still allowing minors into his account after saying he'd block all of them. Moving into May, he began complaining about the attention he was receiving, referring to everything people were doing to him as wasting time. One of his exes, who was also a victim, retold their story. Possibly T, but I'm not sure. And all he had to say to that is, "I don't care about you. Move on." And "I need a Coke." The way he was treating the situation angered the JasPixieArchive admins, especially because none of this was new except for openly mocking the victims. To spread awareness and prevent future victims, they released a breakdown of his manipulation, grooming, and behavior patterns. We've gone over a few of them, though for clarity, I'll go over it one last time. His artwork and platform serve as a bait to draw in victims. The art gets you interacting and checking out his profile, where you can, of course, find a Discord link. The server is open, there is zero security, and moderation is incredibly lenient. Unless you're mean to Venti, then you either get dogpiled or axed on the spot. Other times he will reach out first, typically praising your art and quite literally trying to make you his student. After you two start talking, he'll push his weird taboo fetishes onto you. Do you know Shota? I have a feeling you'd like it. Even after cutting ties or exposing him, he will try to ensure you're on good terms, so he can continue to message you. For example, he is still to this day trying to message D after everything that happened. If he manages to reform the connection with a past victim, he'll try to deflect future criticism with, "My victim forgave me. Why can't you? It doesn't matter anymore." These connections are a shield, not recompense from guilt. He doesn't feel guilt. If you're about to expose him, he freaks out and will start incessantly spamming you, pleading and begging to not have his skeletons shown off to the world. He may then rely on seeming defeated or threatening suicide so you feel sympathy for him. Now, after everything, all of the information I've shared with you, would you believe if I said we still aren't done? Even worse, he never confessed to this one, meaning he was still lying even when he confessed to grooming 10 different people. A user named Sammy came out with a thread showing evidence he was still being weird even after his exposal, and was grooming them for over a year and a half. Throughout these messages are numerous pushes for NSFW audio and photos despite Sammy being 15 at the time. If the ERP logs are leaked, we are doomed. Periodically, he'd apologize for what he was doing, saying, "You were my cool student and almost heir to my own legacy. I shouldn't have done you so dirty. I am not okay as a person. I'm sorry." Of course, these words had no meaning because he'd continue being sexual with them up until March of 2025, when Sammy finally cut contact with him. I think you get the point that Venti isn't a great person. Does he belong in prison? Probably. Should he have a computer? Absolutely fucking not. Does he deserve an online platform? Hell no. And you know what? He does anyways. His public Twitter has 11,500 followers. His posts perform well, his replies are full of support. His Discord server is still active with 1,000 members. Venti is not just a terrible person and a serial offender. He is an active threat that is free to roam around and do whatever he wants. He's proven extensively that he does not care for what he's done, because he doesn't see it as bad. To him, these are just bumps in the road that deserve forgiveness. His remorseful facade makes him feel entitled to keeping the same social media accounts he was soliciting CSEM on. Venti, if you're watching this, which I know you are since you're a narcissist, I was planning on interviewing you before this video dropped, although you seem to have blocked me on Twitter. I am not expecting you to make true on your word of becoming a better person by leaving the very spaces you use to groom kids, or even respond to any of this, since in your own words you've learned it's easier to ignore stuff so it eventually goes away. None of this matters if you refuse to acknowledge it, right? Whatever comes your way after this, I promise it was well on its way already, and it's no one's fault except your own. To the viewers, if you've made it this far, I hope you at least spread the word on Venti, though there are certainly other things you can do. Either way, it's up to us to ensure this fucking goblin never ruins another person's life in the name of his own sexual gratification. Thank you for listening to what I have to say, and goodbye.